Hello, welcome to or welcome back to How to Change the World. I am Catherine Alonso, and I am so excited to be here today for a couple of reasons. One, it is our first interview in quite a while, and I'm so excited to be back, but also because I just got to hang out with Gloria Feldt, who is an incredible, inspirational leader, one of Forbes 50 over 50, and she has dedicated her career to advancing the interests of women. She served for many years as the president and CEO of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America, and for the last 10 years has been serving as the co-founder and president of Take the Lead, an organization dedicated to achieving gender parity for women in organizations around the world, because they know that when we have gender parity, we see meaningful changes in the reality of what it is to live on a day-to-day basis in those communities and those countries. And Gloria shares a lot of detail about the work that she does and really paints an incredible vision of the world that they are creating and how it really will be different to live in our local communities, no matter what country we're in, when we see gender parity in leadership roles across institutions, across communities. And the Take the Lead results really speak for themselves. When women who participate in Take the Lead programs report that 40% of participants reported that in the 6 months after the completion of the program, they received a raise and or a promotion. 90% of participants report that they themselves feel more power and more powerful in their roles and in their lives. And 100% of people say that they would recommend the program to other people. And in my conversation with Gloria, she really digs into this concept of power, what it means, how we can change it, how we need to change our relationship to it, and when we do, what the world will look like. I am so excited to share this with you. So without any further ado, my conversation with Gloria Feldt. Gloria Feldt, welcome to the podcast.
Catherine, it is so good to see you and be here with you.
I am so thrilled to connect with you. You have been a podcast guest in the past, and I'm so excited to have you back and hear all about what you've been up to and these last few years and what is on the horizon for you. So let's start off by tell me a little bit about Take the Lead, the organization that you are the president of and the co-founder of.
Thank you for starting there. Take the Lead is a nonprofit organization that is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. We're very excited about that. And we have the mission of nothing less than intersectional gender parity in leadership in every single sector. What I found when I did my research for a book called No Excuses about 12 or so years ago was that the dynamics were the same for women in every sector. That's why we don't differentiate. We can provide services for women of any sector, either customized to that sector or just broadly, any woman can join in with what we're doing. So my path here was pretty circuitous. It wasn't what I had planned on doing with this stage of my life. But once I had really done some original research myself to try to figure out why women had not reached parity in leadership, even though we had been changing laws and opening doors, and we had been seeing a woman first almost in every sector somewhere. And yet, when I was doing this research, women were stuck at 18% or less of the top leadership positions in every single sector, whether it was politics, business, entrepreneurship, law, you name it. Women were doing the work. We were half of the workforce, earning 57% of the college degrees. The data was already clear that companies with more women in their leadership made more money. And yet it was like we were just stuck. And what I found, which is where I will sort of sum up why Take the Lead exists, what I found was that there were thousands of women's leadership programs and they weren't moving the dial. And so to try to figure out what is that missing piece, because it's not that there's anything wrong with any of the leadership programs that are out there, it's that there was obviously something missing. And the something missing I found was helping women have a better relationship with power and
Mm,
understanding it in a way that we feel comfortable with, that we will embrace and use in a positive way, not the old oppressive power over paradigm that we learned about, but a generative, creative, innovative, limitless power to do good in the world, make life better for your family, whatever it is you want to do, start a business, build a house, whatever. And
yeah.
once I can help women make that shift in their own minds, it is as though masks fall off of faces and it's a whole new world. So then we go from there with very specific, tangible, actionable tools to thrive in the world as it is while we're changing it. And I know changing the world is something you like to do too.
I do. I do. And I love to talk to people who are changing the world, and you are absolutely doing that. One thing I'm curious about is it's so interesting to understand that your research found that the one of the blocks was women really feeling sort of a discomfort or a friction with the concept of power and having
Mm-hmm.
power and being in powerful positions. Is it only women that has to change our relationship with power, or is it something that everybody has to really understand that differently for us to see that parity in leadership?
I think we only have to look at what's going on in the world right now to see that it's not only women who need to change their relationship with power.
Right.
That having been said, women have the greater stake in it. Women
Mm,
have the greater stake in making the change. And that's why I don't want to blame women for anything that's happening. I don't want to tell women they have to change themselves by any means, but you have to know how to make the change in order to have it happen. So for women, because we have borne the brunt of so many negative aspects of change, we must be in the game
yeah.
of changing it. And it is going to be women who will change how men then deal with power. And we can see that in families actually everywhere. We can see the change in how so many more younger women, or excuse me, so many more younger men want to be involved with their children's lives,
Yes.
which was not the case in previous generations at all. So there's much more of a balance now in family life. And that's the kind of thing that doesn't change unless women decide to negotiate that change and know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. So, when you were starting out in your career, what was your original career ambition? What did you want to be first? And then what was the path to where you are today?
Well, it's been a long path, so excuse me if I tell you the whole story. So, truly, I grew up in rural West Texas, and I absolutely bought the prevailing culture that a woman's role was to be a wife, a mother, and basically to take care of everybody else. It wasn't that careers were frowned on, but if you wanted a career, you could be a teacher, a nurse, or a secretary. And I knew that nursing was not going to work for me because I don't like the sight of blood. I knew that being a secretary was not going to work for me because I practically failed typing. I do like teaching. I loved teaching then. I still like teaching. And so I ascertained that what I would be is a high school social studies teacher.
Mm,
And then I married my high school sweetheart. I had 3 children. I was 20 years old. And I was trying to be super mom and do everything for everybody. And somehow I woke up and I started to the community college in Odessa, Texas, where I was living at the time. There was no upper division yet there. And so I started to community college. And once I had completed everything I could do there, I started doing community volunteer work, did some work in the civil rights movement. Yes, even in Odessa, Texas, there was a little bit of it. And I started volunteering at Head Start.
mm,
And then after I had volunteered at Head Start for a year, I was offered a position teaching. And I did that for 5 years and really enjoyed it. And then the University of Texas opened a branch in Odessa. So I quit my Head Start job. I finished my last 2 years in 1 year. I was obsessed with getting that bachelor's degree. And the last class I took was ecology.
Mm.
And I did my paper on this new little Planned Parenthood affiliate that had recently started
Wow.
in West Texas. And I interviewed the executive director. 2 weeks later, I had never met this woman, by the way. 2 weeks later, she called me and she said, I am leaving. I think you should submit a resume.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, I know nothing. I've never run an organization. I know nothing about healthcare administration. I barely know about this organization only from doing this paper. And furthermore, I do need to get some experience interviewing because I'm going to have to go get a job now. It'll be good experience to have an interview, to put a resume together and go through the process. I'm in no danger of being hired because I'm totally unqualified. But as they say, the rest is history. 30 years later, I retired as the national president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, having
Wow.
been the CEO of the affiliate in West Texas and then in Arizona, where I was for 18 years and had, to me, that was the best job I ever had. I got to open clinics all over the state and serve more people. And that was what I enjoyed the most about it. Was in love with the movement and not regretful for a moment of the time that I spent and the incredible opportunities I had to build it during those very heady times. But once I had left and could look back on the whole picture of women's place in the world, basically,
Yeah.
one of the things I could see is that you have to be fighting these individual battles. But until women had equal power, pay, and positions, we would keep fighting the same battles over and over again, and we would never win them. So that's when I decided to study why there was such a disparity in leadership positions in particular. Because I figure if you can get the leadership positions to be more equal, then that'll solve the rest of it. If I'm the CEO of a company, I'm going to want equal pay, right? With my male
Yeah.
counterparts, and I'll have the power to do that.
Mm.
So that's why I started focusing then on the bigger picture of women's leadership and gender parity in leadership. Wrote the book, No Excuses, intended to go on and write more books. That was what I wanted to do with that phase of my life. But I was fairly quickly enticed to create workshops and do teaching using it, taught at Arizona State University for, 10 years or so in a course that I made up called Women, Power, and Leadership. And I developed workshops, and pretty soon, it grew like Topsy and became the organization Take the Lead. So there we are.
Lena, developing and telling stories that create change is our bread and butter. It's why we get up in the morning, and if you are a nonprofit seeking to create change, we would love to help you do just that. We provide purpose-driven branding and marketing services to help change makers like you tell your story, maximize your impact, and build strong connections with your communities. We know that you have an incredible story to tell, and we want to help you tell it. Head to havelina.co to check out our services and schedule a free consultation today to find out how together we can change the world. Well, what an incredible story. And one of the things that I find a lot when I talk to change makers is that they find the sort of general sector that they care about, that they're passionate about. And then what quite often happens is they find themselves digging closer and closer to the root of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that is largely what your career has enabled you to do. And the route that you got to was leadership. And until we get to genuine, clear, intersectional parity of all genders in the workplace, then we're not really going to meaningfully change outcomes. And I just love that. Did you know that was on the journey that you were on, or was it sort of an accident?
I hate to say it, but for somebody who ran Planned Parenthood, my whole career has been unplanned.
Yeah.
It's all been unplanned. And
Yes.
my mantra is just say yes. Just say yes. Opportunities open up. things that you think you are going to do will work out maybe or will not work out, but other things will happen. And if you are open to fortuity and just testing things out, you end up doing some remarkable things. So I feel
Yeah.
very fortunate. I can tell you this is not how I expected I would be spending the last third of my life. I thought I would just be sitting behind this computer and writing every day.
And when you think about why you are driven to do the work that you do, what is that core reason? Why is it that you are so motivated to be doing something
Mhm.
at this stage of your life and career that's completely different than what you may have expected?
First of all, I'm a woman. And I have been through many periods of time when I myself was subjected to various kinds of discrimination. And I mean, the first was those self limiting messages that I got as a young
Mhm.
woman, as a girl
Yeah.
growing up and a young woman. And that's to me is like the first injustice is to limit people's idea of what they can do and what they can be.
Yeah.
And then very specifically, I was, as I mentioned, volunteering in some civil rights organizations. And I noticed that the women were doing most of the actual frontline work, and the men were in the leadership positions and getting all the credit. And I literally had an epiphany that,
Mm.
wait, if there are civil rights, then women must have them too. I mean,
Yes.
this was like an eye opener for me. Really, I'd never thought about it before. But I just had this very visceral reaction to seeing that disparity and realizing that that seems like that's something I want to work on. And so I became involved in some women's organizations. I, um, I just various different ones, and became more active politically also, little by little, having been fortunate to have people who sort of steered me along that path. And so it really came, the actual work crept upon me. But
Yes.
that one moment of epiphany that, wait, if we're talking civil rights, they should apply to everybody in our society, including women. So
Right.
that's it.
And that one epiphany has driven your life, your career, your work, and your vision for the
Hmm.
world. And so when we think about that vision, when Take the Lead has achieved its goal and we are experiencing and living in gender parity in leadership roles across sectors, across organizations, how is the world going to be different? How will it look and feel different for people?
Mm-hmm. When we speak about the world, of course, it's easy to just envision like I'm in the United States of America, right? This is a particular culture. This is a particular country. But when we're thinking about the world as a whole, I think some of these things are truly universal and will
Mm.
happen everywhere as we're able to achieve greater gender parity. Because what we know from looking at countries that do have the greatest gender parity is that they're happier. Everybody's happier. Everybody has a better chance to be who they are and contribute what they can contribute to society. And there's
Yeah.
less conflict. So we can literally see what happens in countries where there is greater gender parity and fairness. It's really all about fairness ultimately, and for people
Yeah.
to be able to feel that they are getting a fair opportunity in the world. I just that to me that makes all the difference. I do not for a minute think it's going to be perfect. There will not be perfection,
No such thing.
but again, the data shows that companies with more women in their leadership tend to be more philanthropic. They tend to be they do have higher return on investment, higher return on equity. Every
Mm.
financial measure is better when there are
Right.
women in the leadership. It doesn't have to be a female CEO, but once there is a critical mass of somewhere near 40% of women in the leadership circles, things get better. Parliaments globally are less likely to go to war.
Wow.
more likely to be able to resolve disputes. Women parliamentarians everywhere in the US as well as around the world are much more likely to work across the aisles, much more likely to be focused on, well, how do we solve this problem? As opposed to, I want that power. I want to
Yeah.
be the one, I want me. Women are just, we are socialized. It's not like this is hardwired, but for thousands of years, we have been socialized
Yeah.
to be more supportive, more empathetic, more collaborative. We've survived by collaborating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are qualities that are now our superpowers. I hope we don't lose them. That's one of the things that I worry about. It's like, as women gain power, we must be cognizant of those qualities and the value of them, and consciously, intentionally maintain those characteristics.
Right. So we are changing what it means to have power. We are not being changed by having power.
That's almost a direct quote from Bella Abzug
Oh,
many
there you go.
years ago, like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Bella, who said everything the best, said women will not be changed by power. Women will change the nature of power, and that is what is happening. Well, that is what can happen, and we see it happening, and we
Yeah.
have to keep pushing toward that.
Yeah. What I love about the picture that you're painting of the world and how it will be different across countries, across sectors, across communities is it's so particular and vivid, and the outcomes are so varied that there is less war, there is less conflict, there is more contentment, and not for women but for everyone. And that
Right.
is so particular and vivid and tangible. I can put myself in that world. And it is so important, I think, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
imagine that, because the hurdles between now and then are plentiful and hard. They're hard to overcome. It's not an easy path. Is that right?
It's very true because, first of all, it's very hard to change a culture while you're living in it.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Mm.
Secondly, nobody relinquishes power voluntarily. So there has to be a way to incorporate opportunities for everybody so that no one is losing power. And I think one of the most interesting things actually is that we live in a world, I say 250 years ago, 300 years ago, 500 years ago, the, the world was driven by brawn. Who was in leadership? It was all about brawn. Whoever was the physically strongest, right,
Yeah.
was going to prevail. But today, our world is driven by brains, by creativity, by innovation, by technologies. And you don't need that physical brawn, or at least that's not going to be the deciding factor. The deciding factor is going to be who is the smartest, who is the most willing to innovate, create, be ahead of the curve, figure out some new solution to a problem. Who's going to figure out the solution to global warming? It's not going to be
Right.
somebody with a sledgehammer. It's going to be somebody with a technology and a way of shaping the culture. That's, to me, I find that very exciting. Actually,
Mm.
it's a whole new way of approaching things. But that is a fundamental difference, and I don't think our culture has completely adapted to that yet.
That's fascinating to think about because, I think there's so many parts of our culture that are reflective of this idea that the winner, the leader is the strongest, the
Right.
physically
Mm-hmm.
strongest person. And what you are laying out for us is actually, in today's modern world, that the things that we need to do and do not require physical strength. They require thought and leadership and creativity and ingenuity, and that those are very equitable skill sets that are not
That's
attached to gender.
correct.
And then there's this disconnect between what our world demands and then the culture that we're living within. Like you said, to quote what you just said back to you, it's hard to change a culture when you are living in it
Very hard.
because it
And there's always
shapes the
pushback, blowback.
mentality.
Yes, always. And we certainly see
Yeah.
that today.
And so Take the Lead is really the entire curriculum and organization is developed in to target some of those hurdles that we'll have to overcome and that those changes we'll have to make. And so who are the people that you engage in your work? Who are some of the different target audiences, if you will, that you really need to engage to be able to realize that vision that you so have beautifully painted for us?
Well, the funny thing is, in my mind, the avatar is that mid-career woman who is trying to figure out her next move, who may be considering bailing out, who I want to stay in the game, who is sort of like tired of battling against some of the implicit and explicit biases that she has dealt with, and so she may want to back away. She may want to not take risks because the consequences can be so hurtful sometimes. But that's what's in my mind. The fact of the matter is, when we offer our programs, which we can do online, we can do them in person, we do them blended, we have a variety of different ways that people can access our training, coaching, role model programs, and thought leadership. And community building. I don't want to forget to say community building, because that's one of the things I find that women most need, by the way, and want, is to have a community once we're done with our training sessions. But what happens is that we end up having women from in their 20s to in their maybe 60s or 70s, and they come with many different questions, many different reasons. I'm always astonished at the job description levels. CEOs, legal counsel. Women never think they know enough. I have a retired general, for goodness sakes, who has taken 2 of my courses. I'm like, Lordy, Peggy, you could teach these courses. What are you doing? But I think that's also a positive thing, to keep learning and keep growing. So essentially what I've done is I've created these courses in ways that I can adapt them and customize them to whatever the level is. So we do early career, mid-career, and executive level very easily. And we do them, as I mentioned before, in any different sector. We customize it. We just finished one for entrepreneurs, for example. And we have done them for journalists, for nonprofit leaders, for lawyers, for healthcare, for media and entertainment. And I'm putting in a plug here to get a sponsor, because these are not inexpensive programs to deliver. I really want to do a series for women in technology, because if there is a sector that needs more women in leadership, so that women will stay in the companies, because women go to work in these tech companies and then they leave because the culture is not welcoming. And if they don't see people who look like themselves in leadership, that is not helpful. That does not help to keep them there. So that's my next goal, is to do a series for women in tech.
That would be awesome. And then tell me a little bit more about what you have coming up on the horizon with Take the Lead.
Right. 2 things I'd love to tell you about. One is in particular that we don't do a lot of events. I know there are a lot of organizations that thrive on doing conferences frequently. We only do one conference a year, and it is always on Women's Equality Day, August 26th. And this year it will be actually August 25th with a concert, and then August 26th with a conference in Washington, D.C., the concert at the Kennedy Center, the conference at the National Housing Center. And we just felt that, it being 2024, Washington, D.C. was the place for us to be this year. And there are a few things going on in the world that might be relevant. So we are going to be doing it then. So, we anticipate, and it will also be virtual. So people can tap into it virtually if they can't be there in person. But we do find that people love to be together in person. The second thing that I will tell you about is I am currently in the process of re-recording all of the online courses that we have, so that we will have a very up-to-date, freshened up 9 leadership power tools to advance your career course, a version of it for entrepreneurs, and probably some short course versions that people can access. That makes it very convenient for people, and they can purchase those with or without coaching to go with it. And so they kind of have a wide range of options for how they want to do this. If they want to do it entirely on their own, fine, go for it. If they want to have some additional support, we can provide that too. And those will be released by the time we are at our conference in late August. We will be ready to share those with the world.
Ever had a book or movie ruined for you because of a bad ending? Yeah, us too. Around here, we believe that storytelling can change the world. And what makes or breaks a story? The ending. That's right. In order for people to care about what you are doing, they need to understand why it matters, what kind of world you're creating in the end. We call this your why. And at Javelina, we're experts in helping our clients not only find their why, but build an entire brand and marketing strategy around it. Visit javelina.co to sign up for a free consultation for our branding and messaging services. And let's bring your why to life. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. And congratulations on 10 years of Take the Lead, which
Thank
is
you.
really incredible. When you look back on the last 10 years, what are some of the biggest things that you have learned about leading this organization and working so hard to realize your mission of gender parity in leadership across sectors?
We have all heard the data about how only 2% of charitable money goes to women and girls organizations. And same for venture capital. We've all heard that data.
Yeah.
And boy, has that ever hit me right in the face. I will tell you that, fundraising for this is not easy. It's not easy. So that's one thing that I learned. I think the other thing that I learned is that it's, as with every other, really, this is a social movement. And as with every other social movement, it's a relay race. It's not a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It is a relay race, and you have to work with your colleagues, your peers, with other organizations constantly to be moving forward, because no one person or organization can do it. And that's really, I think it's so obvious right now, and why it's important for us to think like that and to think expansively. One of my axioms is to believe in the infinite pie. Is there is no finite pie. There's no finite pie of money. There's no finite pie of influence that you need to have.
Right.
And I think the third thing I would say is I didn't realize how important the community building aspect of what we do is. And when we started, it was straightforward training, okay, and coaching. But as we began to see how women connected with each other, and when we would create a Facebook group, for example, and see that years later, those connections made are they're still talking to each other, helping each other, hiring each other. It is so important to create community. So we'll be focusing even more on that in the years to come.
Well, and as you were talking about community before, I was thinking about how in traditional male-dominated power/leadership networks, community was baked into things like the golf course or the bar after work, or even the workplace if everybody in the workplace is male, the vast majority. And so we know that community has been really important and influential in traditional power dynamics. And so it makes perfect sense to build a new paradigm that is going to be an essential part of that. So I find that so interesting that you've learned that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what are some of the things that you're most proud of from the last 10 years?
What I'm most proud of is that we have external evaluations that have found that within 6 months after taking one of our 50 Women Can Change the World programs, 40% of the women who've been through the program have achieved a higher leadership role and or significant pay increase. So I'm a great believer in really truly evaluating what you're doing. And so often in the nonprofit world, that's hard to do. And we were just very fortunate that a foundation funded an external evaluation for us that was quite extensive. That, and the fact that 100% of the women who went through the program said they would recommend it to others. And also that they said they were more supportive of other women. when they finished. Oh, and lastly, 90% said they personally felt more personal power.
Wow.
So
90%?
those are the kinds of tangible things that I'm most proud of.
Yeah. It's really incredible and so closely related to the vision of the different world that you have painted for us. And I think, one of the things I learn all the time is that there is this connection between that long distance vision for how the world is different and the day-to-day actions that create some of the outcomes that you are describing for us. And yet it's pretty easy to lose sight of those things in the day-to-day minutia and
So
challenges
true.
of
Yeah.
creating meaningful change. So how do
Yes.
you stay connected to that vision when things are going wrong, or you have 1,000 unread emails, or you're really tired, or you have a change on your team? Like, how do you stay invigorated?
Oh my gosh. Well, first I take a nap.
The power of a
I
nap.
actually, one of my best skills is napping. I'm very good at
That's great.
napping, and I seriously do believe that naps are very helpful. But honestly, for myself, I find that I must exercise every day,
Mm.
preferably first thing in the morning before anything else. And I need physical activity. Physically to have my body getting engaged and creating its own energy. And that energy helps to keep me positive and focused during the day.
Mm.
I also have this game I play with myself, and believe me, I don't win it every day, but I call it my SMIT, the single most important thing today. So that if I only do that one thing, then I get to reward myself with something because
I
I've
love
done the
that.
thing that was hard. It's usually for me, I hate calling people on the phone, especially when I know I have to ask them for something.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate it. And I'll find every reason in the world not to pick up that phone.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll send them an email first and say, what time could I call you? You know,
Yes.
yeah. See, I'm not alone in that. And so that's it. That's the trick I try to play on myself every day. And I'm basically a resilient person, and I think you only
Mm.
get resilience by doing it, by trying things, failing, knowing it doesn't kill you, um, and and the more feedback you have that teaches you, well, it's okay, it. I
Yeah.
screwed up on that one, but let me try again.
Mm.
The more feedback you have, the easier it gets to stay in the positive and resilient. Lastly, I think I've learned from observing other people that for me, optimism is simply a healthier way to live.
Yeah.
And even if it's fake sometimes, it's just healthier for me personally.
I think that is such an important point when we are living at a time where it is actually hard to avoid the narrative that the world is going to hell in a handbasket.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
that narrative and idea it permeates through everything, through conversations with your
Mm-hmm.
family, through news reports, through headlines. Like it's just and and so that really resonates for me, that optimism is healthier because in a way you and all of us are sort of guarding against this very strong narrative that
Mm-hmm.
everything is terrible and we're all
Right.
doomed.
Yes. Yeah. So true. So true. You feel better physically. You feel better
Yes.
physically, mentally, emotionally if you can keep yourself on some kind of a positive wavelength. Not I don't mean Pollyanna sugarcoat everything. Because you have to face what's happening, and a lot of what's happening is really terrible. There's a lot of
Yeah.
really terrible stuff going on. But when you also can think about the long sweep of history, you can also see that very often it's in those most horrible moments that the best things emerge. I know that people will be seeing this after this has happened, but I was looking at some of the D-Day programs yesterday and thinking, so much of Europe was just destroyed.
Yeah.
you could have gotten very depressed about that. But instead, rebuilding and
Yeah.
rebuilding better. And it turns out that that has really happened. And it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of leadership and optimism. Every moment of chaos creates for itself a really critical moment of opportunity to do something better,
Mm.
to use that energy of chaos to build something better.
To build something better. I love that, Gloria. I really do. So, as our listeners have been listening along and so inspired and want to take part and take the lead, but also want to walk alongside you and realize this vision of gender parity, what is something that they can learn or somewhere that they can go, a resource you might suggest that they can learn more about the work that you're doing and the issue itself?
First of all, our website, taketheleadwomen.com, taketheleadwomen.com. And there they can find many free resources about leadership, women and money, women, whatever it is that you need, you will probably be able to find something that we have written, or we have a booklet, or some resource that can be used. Also, that's where you can find out about our courses, our upcoming training programs, things like that. So that's just always there. In addition, we have a weekly newsletter. And that newsletter, I would encourage people to sign up for it. It gets awards all the time, written by, I can't claim credit for it. It's written by a really wonderful journalist, Michelle Weldon. And she deeply researches at least one original post every week that has just rich information and resources for women to use, or men too, actually, for men too. And because ultimately leadership is leadership, so it's all available to everyone. And occasionally I write a little something, and that's also in our newsletter. We will also have information every week if we have a program coming up, so we will provide that. Very often we will provide also information about some of our program partners that we work with. For example, $1 Million Women, we have been helping them to promote their, they have a program for, to help women entrepreneurs scale to $1 million in revenue a year. So we will promote things like that. And then of course we are on pretty much all social media that you can think of. We're there. And we love to connect with people. I love to hear from them. I hope that people will really interact with us and just join in the conversation.
That's wonderful. And then what is a thing that people can think about, either a new way of thinking or an idea that they might not have considered in the past?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll go back to my original comments about power to versus power over, and think about how that can change how you address the world. Think about how that can change how you think about how you use the energy and the talents that you have to accomplish what you want to accomplish. I always revert to that because I feel that's the core, that's the basis of everything. And once you get your head straight with that, you can do anything else.
Yeah. Wonderful. And then lastly, what is one thing that our listeners can do to realize the beautiful vision of this more content, less conflicted world that you painted for us today?
Oh, wow. Well, you can join up. You can join up because we're always eager to have volunteers. But also, I think you can also just look at your own community and see what needs to be done. And don't think that one post on Facebook is actually doing something. Get your hands into it. Actually meet with people. Actually talk to people. and and just like if every day you reach out to one person, you will find that the world turns on human connections, and that cumulative effect of those connections that is your true wealth, and it enables you to do so much more in the world also. So that may be not as specific as you were looking for, but I'm all into mindset, so I think that's the mindset that can carry us forward.
I think that's perfect. Gloria, thank you so much for the work that you do, for spending time with us today, and all of the rich, incredible insights that you've shared with us.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for having me.
Enjoyed that incredible conversation with Gloria Feldt. I know that I did. She shared so many incredible insights. I loved her very vivid picture of the world that she's creating, that Take the Lead is creating, and all of the people that are engaged with Take the Lead are creating. And she invited us to, when I said, what can people learn? What can people think? What can people do to make the changes that you are spelling out for us? She invited us to think about power to do something instead of having power over people, really thinking about this different way, this different mindset, this different framing of what power means. And so when I think about that for myself, my role as a business owner, a business leader, and a CEO, I think it's really easy to think that I have power over people's jobs. I have power over their salaries, whether they're hired or fired, what their jobs look like. I have power over things like decisions made in client projects, but also in the companies that I lead. And if I reframe that to I have power to, really, I have power to create opportunities for people, clients and team members alike. I have power to create a different way of thinking, a different way of being, a different way of existing as it relates to a company, and what kind of culture and day-to-day existence you can create for people. I also have power to live my life the way I want to live it, traveling more, so splitting my time between two countries, writing a book, being a keynote speaker. And when I think about what I have power to do rather than power over, it is immediately way more expansive. There's so much more I can do when I think what I have the power to do, or the power to create, versus thinking about what I have power over, which is really quite limited. And it's about limiting people, limiting myself, limiting other people, limiting realities, whereas power to is about creating and expanding. I'm going to think about that more. If you think about that, I would love to hear from you, Catherine, at javelina.co or at javelina.co on all of the social media platforms. Comment on the video if you're watching this on YouTube. I would love to hear from you. What is that bringing up for you when you think in your life and your role, what you have power to versus what you have power over? What is coming up? What are some of the things that you're thinking about? I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. I know that I have. And until next time, have a great one.